Five. Greetings and welcome again to another episode of Naval String Connections. I'm Bilal Morris, and the countdown there was a little bit impromptu, and but we are on. And again, I want to say I am Bilal Morris. This is Naval String Connections. We are live, and we have a lot of good information and a very, very, very important guest that is in studios with us today. And just want to say again that Naval String Connections is sponsored by the Ministry of Tourism and Diaspora Relations. And our producer is Noor Mohammed. And our executive producers, XTV. And we want to thank always the man behind the control, Harlan, who brings us and helps us to bring this live broadcast every Thursday. And Belizeans across the Belizean diaspora, most of all, we are inviting you always. Tell one to tell one that Naval String Connection is the Belizean show in the Belizean diaspora, coming to you live and direct through X Television, XTV, and we want to reach out to those Belizeans across the Belizean diaspora: New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Texas, Houston, Florida, the United Kingdom, wherever you are watching this show. And we want to say that you can watch the show through the XTV Facebook page, as well as you can see Naval String Connection through the YouTube Facebook page, the YouTube page of XTV. And we want to expand our audience, and we know that this is like a 2.5 years since Naval String Connection has been coming to you, bringing you the voice of the Belizean diaspora, as well as those movers and shakers on the ground in Belize. The purpose of Naval String Connection is to bridge that gap between Belizeans at home and abroad, to have a conversation. The technology today has made the world at one room, where we can break down barriers and reach out and have a conversation with each other. And today we will just have that, because our guest today in studio is Deseree Aruz, who is a renowned, I would say, renowned Belizean broadcast journalist, a media personality. And many of you may have listened to Deseree Aruz when she would bring us that eclectic news and views on what used to be Creme Radio, when Creme Radio was the power. We still have Creme Radio. And now we will be seeing Deseree Aruz live on television. Because at the time we never saw, she will have to say that herself. But Deseree has a large accolades and profile here. We will let her talk about who she is. And without any further ado, we want to introduce you to Deseree Aruz, the Belizean broadcast journalist on the ground in Belize. My sister, welcome to Naval String Connections.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a long introduction. Thank you very much, Bilal. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm especially proud to be part of this specific episode, since today is the 57th anniversary of Amandala. And, you know, I come from back at the zinc fence, proud to have come from back at the big zinc fence. And yes, I did TV one time. I can recall doing television. And it was they had a raffle at the Bottom Dollar store where people, I think about 3 persons were doing, when they have Nelly Raceway, you try to get as much groceries and you have to come up to a
Yes,
certain
I
amount
remember.
or
It was
less.
good.
Yeah,
Yes,
that
yes.
was the first and only time I did TV. I am not a TV person in terms of broadcasting. I've never done TV as a broadcast, as something I did. I prefer to be behind the scenes on the radio and wooing people with my voice.
Yes. Well, now they're seeing you live
It's
and you
for
look good.
myself.
You look good. You look good on television.
Thank you. But interestingly, I just want to say this here too, seeing that it's Amandala's birthday, that the reason I went behind the zinc fence actually was because of the great Evan X. Hyde. He actually wanted me behind the zinc fence from when I was working at radio. It was BCB, the Broadcasting Corporation of Belize at that time, in 1992 when I started, and several times he requested, and several times I declined, and then BCB went into receivership in 1998. I went away for a little while and then I came back and I decided, let me go to, let me finally go to Cremandala, back at the zinc fence. Evan X, if he's listening, he actually wanted me to be on a talk show, a morning talk show. And I guess at that time I was not as confident doing the talk show because I believe that doing talk shows, you have to have a certain amount of knowledge and, doing your research and being able to speak with authority, with confidence, with that knowledge and background knowledge and all of that. And I don't think that I was prepared for that at that time. But yeah, I just want to big up Amandala on your 57th anniversary today. Big up Evan X, big up all the foundation crew back at the zinc fence. And I'm proud to be here. But in terms of how I started in media, did you ask that question?
No, not as yet, but before I want to ask that question, I want to ask you, man, where your little string me buried, where you're born. Tell me about, tell me
Okay.
about where you were born. The whole purpose of the show, Naval String Connection, we try to make our guests give us when a naval string me buried, where part of Belize you were born, and tell us something about how you were raised, your educational background, and so forth, coming up, right? Growing up in Belize.
Okay.
Yeah.
My neighbor string buried at Belize
Yeah.
in my 50 odd years on this earth. I've never lived in the US except for when I went to do my master's back in 2014. I spent a year and a half, 18 months in New York, but I was born in Belize City. I'm the youngest of 8 children born to the same mother and father, Raymond Kane and Maggie Fraser. And my mom is from Boom, so it's 3 girls and 5 boys. My favorite brother was murdered back in 2001. And in terms of me growing up, we grew up in the city at the start. I spent up until age 6 in Belize City on Niels Pen Road. Looked totally different from how it looks now. And then we moved to Boom at the age of 6. I spent some of my teenage years in Boom, went to Boom Methodist School, played softball. That was my favorite thing to do. And then returned to Belize City for high school. And I didn't go to sixth form. However, I went to, at that time, there was an apprenticeship program via the Belize Teachers College. At that time, they were accepting students straight from high school to learn how to teach. Teaching was something I wanted to do as a young person because I had the opportunity. I had some really good teachers in primary school, and they always put me in charge of the class. And I said, you know what? I want to be a teacher, right? And so going to Teachers College was part of that plan to become a teacher. So I went to Teachers College back at the young age of 16. I was the youngest person at Teachers College back then. Did 2 years there. I didn't do my final year practical because it was during that, well, actually, I did do practical for 2 years. I taught at Boom Methodist School where I was attending up until Standard 5. Let me go back a little bit. And then I left Boom and went to Ebenezer Primary School where I graduated from. And then I went to Wesley College for 4 years, graduated from Wesley College, and then I went to Teachers College. So after Teachers College, I taught for 2 years at the Baraboo Methodist School, but I found that teaching was not for me. It was not something that I genuinely love. It came with a lot of challenges, and I was pretty young at that time. And so it was during that time, like towards the end of my short career as a teacher, that I heard of a vacancy at the Broadcasting Corporation of Belize for an announcer. And I applied. At that time, they used to do, you had to do a voice test. So I did my voice test and waited, and I got the call. I got the call that I was hired as a radio announcer, and that's where my career started back in 1992.
Wow, Deseree, that's an amazing journey.
Yeah,
But
can I just
go
add
right ahead. Go right ahead,
one
man.
little thing before the next question? My well, not a mentor, but the person that I looked up to at that time, that I listened to on the radio and I wanted to imitate, and I actually imitated, was the great Ann Wade.
Hey.
She was the person that she was, to me, in my humble opinion at that time, she was one of the best news readers, very suave, very articulate, clear, concise. And I remember my parents used to, we lived on Mex Avenue. My parents used to buy the Amandala, interestingly, newspaper every week, every Friday. And I found myself reading or practicing to read similarly to how I heard Ann Wade read. So instead of like reading silently the newspaper, I started to read aloud and started to act like I was reading the news the same way I heard Ann Wade reading the news on the radio. So that was like my first, and I think that was before or while I was going to Teachers College. So you see, it was in my destiny. It was in my destiny.
It was in
Yes.
your destiny. You were molding
Right.
yourself for that
Yes.
career. As well as molding
Yes.
yourself for a teacher, you were also molding
Yes.
yourself to become a broadcast journalist. That's
Yes.
such an amazing journey. And looking at your background and where your navel string was buried, or where you may bury, it is amazing to see, you know, your walks of life, where you come from, and in terms of your upbringing. But you know, there's we have a very talented cadre of Belizeans, a country full of talent in terms of that. And when you said that 16 years old, you were at Teachers College, you know, that really struck me, because I am also in that journey. I teach to make a living. I'm not a broadcast journalist to make a living, right? To make a living,
Oh,
but I teach to make a living. But
wow.
as we go along here in this conversation, tell us about your journey through Belizean media. I mean, you gave us a little glimpse of it just now, but expand on it if you may, Deseree.
Yeah. I want to add here too, in terms of talent, Miss Adele Ramos, who is also part or was also part of Amandala
Andy.
back at the Zinc Fence. She actually was the youngest graduate from Wesley College. She and I graduated together. And I think she was 14 going on 15 and was the valedictorian at Wesley College. So
Delay.
yeah, the Zinc Fence has seen some really talented people
Yes, that talent there. I know of that
pass
talent. I
through.
worked around that talent. Yes.
Yeah. So after I did my stint at Radio Belize, and it closed down in November of November of 1998. I went away for a couple months, then I came back, did a short stint at FM 2000 for like about 7 months. At that time it was Gerald Garbett who was the manager there, and I worked alongside Anne Marie Williams in the newsroom for a bit. And then I moved on. That was when I moved on to Creme Radio in, okay, I have the dates mixed up. November, it was February of 98 that that Radio Belize shut down, I believe. But I was at CREM in November of 98, November 15th of 98, or is it 99? Anyway, my memory fades me at this time, but I was there. And when I was hired at CREM, it was as the news director. I believe it was Keith Swift who was filling that role,
Yes.
who filled that role at the time, and then he left, and I believe he went to Channel 7, and so I was hired as the news director. But of course, I later became an on-air personality, and then Mr. Frisco joined me a few months later, and we created one of the most, I would say, exciting and dynamic show on radio, which was Music by Request, that became really popular in households in Belize. And so I did on-air personality, I did news, I also did remote broadcast. And you know, back in the day, and I think to some extent now, we had to do our own editing. When we started at, when I started at Radio Belize, the editing was with pink tapes on the reels, and I'm sure a lot of people don't know what I'm talking about. But we had those big reels, and you listen, you turn back, and then you slice, and there was some pink editing tapes that you used to put it together so that you take out all those ahs and ums and make it sound like really perfect. Cut, yep. So it was literally cut and tape, which is now cut and paste in technical lingua now that we use, or that people use to do editing. So but yeah, that is how my journey started and continued through media. Radio Belize, then I did a short stint at FM 2000. I did 11 years at CREM. And the thing is about CREM, that I liked was that it gave me the opportunity. The manager at the time was Michael Hyde. He gave me the opportunity to work part-time while I went back to school, because remember, I did not complete my teacher's program at Teachers College. I did the 2 years and I taught for 2 years, but there's a mandatory 1 year after you do your 2 years academic subjects and so forth to do a practical. That part I didn't do. Or did I fail? I did it and I failed. Anyway.
Oh man, you don't feel that. You never feel that, Deseree.
I did my 2 years teaching, so I didn't have a degree per se. So during my time at CREM, I got a scholarship from the then Minister of Education, Cordell Hyde. And I went back to do my bachelor's at UB, bachelor's in English, in 2000. And it was in 2000 that I believe UB moved to Belmopan. So there was still the business campus and the education campus in Belize City. However, the main campus, which included the social sciences and the arts and so forth, went to Belmopan. So I had to travel basically every day. I would go be on air, then go in the newsroom, read the news, and run out at the intersection, where CREM is, Partridge, and where the bus passes, to hopefully catch the bus when it passes at 1, to travel to Belmopan to get there, to reach to my first class, which began at about 3 in the evening. So I had evening classes. So I did that part-time for 7 years and graduated at the top of my class in 2007, with a bachelor's in English. I returned to CREM in 2000. Well, I was still at CREM, but I was there part-time. And so I stayed there until 2011, because being offered or allowed time to go back to school was, to me, it was something very special to me. And so I thought that I could not just move on as soon as I graduated. I had to at least give back some time with my qualifications. And so I did, and I moved on in 2011 out of media as a broadcast journalist, as a news person, and that's where I started to do public relations and communications work when I was employed as the public relations and consumer affairs officer at the Public Utilities Commission in Belize. And I stayed there. At that time, I thought that was my dream job. Coming out of the media, you know, you have to be working weekends, you work holidays, you work during the hurricane season, you work Christmas, you work New Year's, you work Easter. Every time everyone is having their fun, they're spending with their family, you have to be working, but it was something that you love. So you didn't see it at that time as a young person that it was an issue. But as you start getting older and you want to spend more time with your family, then you know you start thinking that maybe you need to move on to something that would fit within what it is that you want to do and getting your time off and so forth. So it was that in mind. And then when I graduated from UB in 2007, I prayed for a scholarship to do my master's. That scholarship came 7 years later while I was at PUC. It came in 2014. I was offered an OAS scholarship, which, as we all know, is not fully paid for. You have to still find a portion of that payment for tuition and lodging and so forth. At that time, it was Mr. John Avery, who was the chairman of the PUC. And I wrote to the board and I told them my plans. I requested first study leave. I had 3 years there already, but I wasn't granted the study leave. So I opted to resign because I believe that if you pray to God for something, He's going to send it when you least expect it. So you're supposed to expect it anyway. And so if you pray for something and you're not ready for it, then why are you praying for it? You know, if you're not ready, you have to make yourself ready. And when it came, I was not ready in the sense of financially ready, but I said, I prayed for it. So I have to grab this because God has answered my prayer. So I resigned, not knowing how I would pay for my second year of tuition. I did get some funding from the PUC for my first year, but I had to do it. I mean, this was an opportunity that would not come again. And so I resigned from the PUC in 2014, went all the way upstate New York to Rochester at the Rochester Institute of Technology, where I pursued my master's in communication and media technologies in 2014 to 2015, up to 2015 December, and then I came home and did my thesis in January to May. And for my thesis, I did a study on sensationalism. It was like a baseline study, so it definitely requires more work with any future research on sensationalism in newspapers, and I used the Mandala and the Reporter newspapers, which were the most circulated newspapers at that time. And I looked at the headlines and did a comparison between 2010 and 2014 to see which newspaper was more sensationalized as based on the definition of sensationalism. I will not say what the conclusion was, but I can definitely share the link for that study that those who are listening can look at. But I went back in May of 2016 and defended my thesis, and I graduated on May 16, 2016. I defended my thesis on May 9th and I graduated on May 16, 2016 with a Master's of Science in Communication and Media Technologies, summa cum laude.
Wow, Deseree. You see that you Belizeans across the Belizean diaspora at home who is watching XTV. You see these talent that we have here in Belize amongst our outstanding Belizean women. My sister, that was amazing. And I mean, you struck platinum and gold wherever you went in terms of your whole educational pursuits. And what a journey through your whole, through Belizean media. But at the time, I mean, you stepped out of the Belizean confine
Yeah.
and went abroad, study, and returned back with and equipped, with that kind of skill in terms of expanding your whole media repertoire, your whole media knowledge and stuff like that, that I know today you are transferring that body of knowledge, right?
Yeah, I wanted to add one thing, Bilal, for our listeners, and I want to share this because for those who might be listening who are contemplating something similar, a journey that they might see it seems difficult or challenging, or they're thinking like, I can't do this,
Yes.
or they're worried about finances and all that. I want to share this testimony. So when I remember, I said earlier that with the OA scholarship, you don't have a full scholarship per se. You have to try to find finances for at least the second year of studies. So I was in New York, Rochester, New York, very cold. It's close to the Canada border.
Yes.
It's like about an hour and a half from Canada. So in the wintertime, it's chilly. It's really chilly. It has gone like to single digits with the wind below zero. Anyway, I was the only Belizean at Rochester Institute of Technology. Now, this is a renowned college in the upstate area of New York. People there didn't even hear of the name Belize before when I went there.
Wow.
Now, I did pretty well in my first year, got my grades and everything because, that was paid for. I got assistance from the PUC, the OAS paid, and blah, blah, blah. The second year now, that's where the problem started after summer. So, with colleges, you cannot get your report card if your bill is not paid. So now you cannot register either. So it was time to register for the second year, the first semester of the second year. And I could not register because my tuition was not paid. But a couple weeks before that, I had visited the office of the financial office and so forth, and tried to figure out how I could do like a payment plan or something. I reached out to different people. And remember, I was there alone. I didn't know anyone and so forth. And there was a night when I was like, I don't know what to do, I reached out to my advisor. I reached out to people I knew, and like nothing was forthcoming. And I was like, this can't be happening. I have to figure out something. And so I prayed. I prayed because that's all I knew to do. And there were nights when I cried. Because one of the stipulations in the OAS scholarship is that if you do not complete the program or if you fail, you have to pay back 60,000 US dollars. No, this is not an option for me. I don't have a job. So, I
US
mean,
dollars is not nice.
so I was like, okay, I cried myself to sleep, but I prayed. And then I said, you know what? God, I give this to you. I don't know what else to do. I've done my best with everything else, and I don't know what else to do, but you're going to work it out. And I just gave up. I just continued my classes. I was doing classes. I think it was summer, but I couldn't register for the other one. But 2 weeks later, I got a call from the office of, I don't remember the guy's name, but long story short, my $8,000 US balance was paid, and I got an additional $2,000 from Belize. And so I cleared my $10,000. And what I found out later was that my advisor was able to get donations from people at RIT who didn't even know where Belize was to support a student who came from Belize an adult student amongst younger student who came from Belize to do her master's, and my tuition was paid. Isn't God good?
That's what I'm going to
So
say. You see how prayer works?
so I'm sharing that story for those of you who are listening to not give up, especially if it's a dream that you've had from you were a little girl or a little boy, or from whenever, whatever dream you have, don't give up on those dreams, no matter how hard it gets. I knew from the age of 9 that I wanted to go to college. I told my mom, I want to go to college. I don't know what I want to study. I don't know what I want to do yet, but I know I want to go to college. And I'm a first generation college graduate in my family. And so I give all praises and thanks to the Most
Wow,
High.
out of a family of 8, you were the first.
Yes.
That is absolutely amazing. And, a lot of people talk about them being the first in their family to earn a college degree, but you had that plan from you were 9. You were,
Yes.
you were bent to make sure that that happened. And,
Yes.
Desiree, as you speak about your journey in New York and the sharing that challenging time and that moment, you were a Belizean in the diaspora, and being that this
Yeah.
is a show that for you could understand,
Yeah.
you're not only sharing a story of challenge, of struggle and perseverance to those Belizeans and those who are listening at home and abroad about stay your course and don't give up, but you're also sharing the knowledge of what it's like to live in the diaspora away
Yeah.
from, right? Wouldn't you
Yeah.
say that was a great experience? It is that you were a diasporan Belizean, right?
It was a good experience. Initially, it was very difficult being away from my family, because at that time my daughter had just graduated from high school and was entering sixth form. And so while she was entering her first year of sixth form, I was away studying. And then my husband and I were recently married, like probably less than 2 years. And so my son was with me, but it was difficult being away from family. But the exposure and the experience was definitely worth it, because not being in New York, if I didn't go there to study, I would not have been exposed to different things. You know what I'm talking about, because you have the discrimination, you have the there's a lot that you experience as a foreigner in the US. And I could imagine, especially those who might not have the legal status, it probably is really even more difficult. But I think I am blessed to have had that experience, because I was also able to travel to some of my friends that are from Belize who live in the States, and hang out with them and go out to restaurants with them. And I even had a friend in Florida, where I went to when I was on break to take care of their young child while they were working, him and his wife. No, so that experience really opened my eyes to a lot of things that I would not have had the privilege to experience had I stayed here in Belize. So yeah, it was worth the experience for sure.
You saw the struggle that Belizeans who live abroad, what they
Yeah.
go through Europe. You got a taste of that it's
Oh
not
yeah.
easy. It's not an easy road, and it's
Oh
not bed
yeah.
and roses, right?
For sure. For
Very
sure.
much so. Again, we want to say this is Naval String Connections. I'm Bilal Morris, and we are speaking with our sister, broadcast journalist, media personality, Belizean media personality, Deseree Arzu. She's sharing with us that journey that she has taken from having where her navel string was buried in a Belize, all
Hmm.
the way to the journey through Belizean media, right? We see these examples that people, guests who come up here and share with us their journey, right? The trials, the struggles and tribulations that they have endured, in other words, to get their goals achieved. And this is what the String Connections is all about, is to show the journey of our people, right? The exodus, the struggle of our people at home and abroad. And Desiree was able to get you yourself, who is a homegrown Belizean, have not really lived anywhere outside of Belize itself, but have got a chance during your studies, your advanced studies, to get a chance to see what it's like to live abroad. And my sister, we are so glad that you bring that experience and you bring that to us and share that knowledge with us. But tell us again too, the media industry that we talk about, you know, the Belizean media industry, or the media industry on a whole, right? Global media, everything that is based on information, right? That there is, what do you think is the media? How do you think the media it Belize was like uh, when you were coming up, when you were practicing and being a personality, a media personality on broadcast on broadcast radio, um, and what is it like now? Have you seen drastic changes? Talk about what it was like then for you and what it is like now. Share with our viewers that particular connection to then and now.
Okay. So the first the first one I'd like to share is what I mentioned earlier. Back in the day, when I started out, we used to have to do a voice test even before you get on the radio. So when I worked at Radio Belize, or BCB, Broadcasting Corporation of Belize, and got the call, the first thing I did was they gave me a script. I believe it was Trevor Jeffries and Brian Mosiah who were in charge of, I think Trevor Jeffries was in charge of Radio Belize. He was the program director for Radio Belize, and then Brian was the program director for Friends FM, which I was getting the job for. And so I had to do a voice test, and they gave me 2 news scripts to read while they were there looking at me. And, you know, it was nerve-wracking, but there was a record. I think it was William Usher, who works at another radio station now, who was there as well doing the recording. And so we had to do I had to do a voice test. And based on that voice test and how I read the script, they would evaluate it, the sound of my voice, how I read, and so forth. And then they would hire you. And that happened for, I believe, most of or all of the announcers who were hired and during that time and before my time. Today, compared to today, where like anybody could work on radio, anybody and their granny could work on radio, and it's just like who you know, for the most part, who you know, not how your song and so forth. So that's a big difference in terms of how people are hired. In terms of the music and how that is rotating on radio, I remember we had a script on how to, on what we call, I forgot the name that was given to it, but it's like what they call the announcer's Bible. So that told you when to play an announcement, when the news is on and so forth. But what it also did in the studio, we had a music clock. So the music clock would tell you what type of music to play, when to take a break and play what we call a jingle or a station ID, when to give the time and so forth. I don't think that exists here anymore in the media. It's not structured. It's like anything goes kind of thing. Another big change is for sure the way how news is gathered, because now we're looking at new media. Back in the day, I think the internet was just starting in the early 90s to mid 90s. The internet was just becoming popular, so we didn't have that leverage. So now news is like on the spot, and anybody shares the news, and we have associations, organizations, individuals who call themselves news broadcasters, and they're not. It's just, I would say, yellow journalism, so to speak. But back then, when I worked in media, it was way different. You had to check for accuracy. So there were 2 things that we learned as journalists. When in doubt, leave it out. When in doubt, check it out. So you either check it out to see if it's true, or you leave it out until you confirm that it's true. Nowadays, it's like, okay, we're just going to say something to sensationalize it, and then afterwards we're going to make the correction. So that's another big difference. So it has changed so much, and people somehow are more gullible to believing fake news. I know this is a term that I believe it was the US president coined a few years ago. They are more gullible to believing fake news than the real news. So if you as a journalist today working is slow on getting the accurate information out first, it's going to be pretty difficult for you to correct what has already been out there circulating as fake news. So it is a big change, and I believe in change. I do, but with change also comes a responsibility, and also as a journalist you also have a responsibility to tell the truth. One of the things as a journalist, you have to be fair. You have to try and get all sides of the story, and a lot of times that is not happening in this day and age. You know, a lot of stations, they just read a press release verbatim as how it's sent, and there's no further investigation being done. But I also see that a lot of investigation is being done by some media personnel, and I believe those are the older heads that are leaning towards, you know, getting more information and doing more investigative journalism in this day and age. So there's a lot that has changed, and I think I said it earlier before we came on air that the traditional media is becoming somewhat obsolete. People are now looking towards internet, the new media, you know, getting their stories from there. And so it's a big challenge for radio and TV, especially in terms of the advertising dollar. People tend to prefer to have, you know, sponsorship on the internet because it reaches a bigger and broader audience. It's international. You can have a story go anywhere in the world as opposed to hearing a story on the radio or on the TV, which still serves an audience because we do have people in the villages and so forth, the older heads who are still listening and reading and so forth. But I respect and admire those journalists in Belize, and I want to make mention here particularly of two of them that I respect, highly respect, Jules Vasquez and Marisol Amaya from Bacade Zinc. I have a lot of respect for them because they are on the ground, and they are two of the investigative journalists that try to get more from the story than just a simple press release. But it's really difficult. It's a big challenge, and I don't know. I'm not sure how they could leverage against new media. It's challenging. It's really challenging, and especially, like I said, the advertising dollar isn't there anymore. So that's another economic challenge that journalists and broadcast organizations face in this day and age. Back in the day, I remember we used to get paid for voicing Christmas ads or any ads that companies want a particular voice. You're paid to voice that. You get an extra money for that. During the Christmas time, we used to make a lot of extra money because, you know, you used to have those Christmas programs, depending on the time frame, depending on the particular business, you get paid accordingly. So that doesn't happen anymore. So a lot has changed. A lot has changed.
Very much so. And coming from you, a media expert, I mean, your credentials. And I think, Deseree, in that I feel deeply that you are one of the most educated media personalities, being, you know, between broadcast journalism, you know, and, you know, public relations. You are one of the most highly educated Belizeans who are holding that kind of credential right now. And then when you speak from a sense of authority because you know what you're talking about. You're not only in theory, but in practice because you have seen
Yeah,
it. You have been
yeah,
there. You've been there then, and now you have been there, and you're here now, right? So
yes,
you can see how it changed. And again, we want to say this is Naval String Connections. I'm Bilal Morris, and we are talking with media personality, broadcast journalist Deseree Aruz. And we want to say that Naval String Connections is sponsored by the Ministry of Tourism and Diaspora Relations, our producer is Nur Muhammad, and executive producers is XTV itself. We want to thank the man behind the controls, Harlan, and for making this show possible every week. And you know, Desiree, when you talk about BCB and Radio Belize, man, the question I wanted to ask you and going right into that kind of conversation again is the voice, right? The man that I used to love Radio Belize, Eddie Seferino Coleman. Eddie Seferino Coleman, as well as Rene Villanueva, but of course, my music DJ was on way, that voice, that silk.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know, we want to just like, man, those personalities on Radio Belize. I mean, Radio Belize was theater of the mind. You know what I'm saying? And just hearing those people like you, I was motivated by people like Manfred Atkins, broadcasting sports, right? And I used to glue to the radio just to hear Manfred Atkins brings you that sports report. I could still hear the jingle in my signature too.
I don't know that voice. I'm not.
And when Evanix Hyde is broadcasting football out of MCC ground, fire on the barracks, that was another one of my popular guys, because for me, he created like a whole genre, right? Whole genre of sportscasting that we have never heard of. I heard Matt with that when I heard Linda Rogers, but when I heard the X as a sportscast, I was like, that guy, they have a whole different spin. The way on his
I remember meeting Evan X for the first time long before I even went to Amandala. He went to, and I think I mentioned this to him one time, he went to Wesley College Career Day back in 87 or 88? He went to Wesley College Career Day, and this tall, dark, handsome guy, short hair, you know, his usual haircut, and he usually has his shades on, his sunglasses. And back then, he had his handkerchief in his back pocket, and he has that bounce that he does. Yes, that swag, and he stepped in the classroom, and that's how I remembered Evan X. Hyde. And so that was the first time I met him, the first and only time I met him in high school, about to graduate. And then later on, of course, when I went back at the Zinc, I was really excited to be part of his foundation, no?
Yes, indeed. And those voices, as we talk about, you know, we talk about that particular element, Desiree, about the power of the human voice in broadcast journalism, in broadcasting itself. And Radio Belize for us was theater of the mind. Talk about that, if you may, in terms of how the power of the human voice. I mean, those Belizean voices, you talk about the voice of On Wade, how it really empowered you, right?
Oh yeah. And before I go into that, Bilal, this just came to me. I remember Radio Belize, BCB, and before the Creme New Year Cycling Classic became the Creme New Year Cycling Classic, it was the BCB Creme New Year Cycling Classic. Yeah, that was a collaboration way back in the early to mid 90s. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. So even then there's a overlap, a connection with BCB Creme, you know, there's Creme. But anyway, so the in terms of the power of the human voice, so what I like about radio and using your voice as power, right? It creates that intimacy. So when you're on the radio, people, and I used to do this too, right? When you hear people's voice, you start to picture how they look, how tall they are, if they're handsome or they're pretty, you know, and what kind of personality. Yeah. So, but moving further than that, or going deeper than that, what radio does, or what voice does on radio, it creates that intimacy with your audience. So on the radio, you can reach people anywhere. So you could listen to the radio in your kitchen, you could be in your car, you could be in your bed, you could be at work, you could be at a village store, you could be on the street side, they chill out that they in the furthest village where could catch the radio, and you can have that intimate connection with your audience, right? Unlike speaking like well, maybe I'm jumping the gun here. Being a communications expert, a lot of times you have to actually have direct conversation with your audience, going out in the communities. Like, I know we're going to probably talk about this or touch on this later, but going out in communities and speaking with people, it's more one-on-one. So, but radio gives you that opportunity to connect intimately, even though you're far away. It still feels like the person is close. And I know if you used to listen to um they sometimes they still do it on radio and they play my name is a McKee's story time. And then you remember one and a story where you listen to the radio and they say he had a Spanish man in it and he had the Creole man and how you want to know if the man in the radio. So it's like that.
Master
People,
storyteller.
yeah, people connect, like they feel like you're the talk to them, like that day you're the talk to. And it happens. I have a personal experience with that, which I can share where it happened more than once. So as a remote broadcast manager, right, we used to go out in different communities to broadcast different events. So let's say this was the Crooked Tree Cashew Festival or Tilapia Fest. So we were there doing a broadcast and, they hype up the crowd and come out and everything. And then because of that conversation and people listening, people started coming out. And then when they reached, it was not as exciting as it sounded on the radio. So they had their own the way how they see everything because of the way you speak on the radio, and that encouraged them to come out and so forth. So that's how powerful the voice can be, where you can create a scenery. It's like reading a book, right? When you read a book, you have your own imagination as to how the author is explaining and describing different scenery and so forth. So people connect emotionally sometimes to announcers. I mean, it's like I said, you have different characters, right? You have different characters in a book or even on TV, and you'll get for hate some and you get for love some. And it's the same way on radio. People like certain announcers and they don't like others, or they like them less. So they can't wait. I've heard people say, I just set my radio for 9 o'clock. After 9, when I know music by request the command, and Frisco and Lady D the command, and I know come off for the radio till they come off. So it's that kind of intimate connection that you can have as a radio announcer, where people just connect with you, even though they haven't seen you, they haven't met you. You have that power to connect with them, and that same power that you have with your voice, you can do positive things with. You can encourage them to, change behavior and so forth, and use that power for good, not for bad.
Empowerment using the human voice
Yes.
and the role broadcasters play, like yourself.
And responsibility as well. Using your voice responsibly, not to encourage negative, like a lot of people are doing on Facebook. If you look at Facebook now, it's so different from 10 years ago. I met my husband on Facebook 16 years ago. Wow. And it was so different back then. It was so fun. We actually met via a mutual friend's post, and we were having fun on that post, and that's how we connected. Nowadays, they say something funny on Facebook, man, everybody just take it differently. People are so angry, and so it's changed so much. So with new media, social media, and all of that, it has made life a little bit more challenging and difficult, especially as it relates to communication, because the one-on-one communication that you used to have is not there anymore. People rather pick up their phone and depend it rather than talk, or the miscommunication because you say something and then people interpret it differently. It's really challenging. But back in the day, the power of the voice, and even now the power of the voice on radio, when used effectively and responsibly, it can do a really good thing. It can create a lot of good changes.
Absolutely. And we are so happy that you have explained that in a way, because a lot of the times people they have their favorite personalities, right? That they hear. Even now in television, we look forward not only to hear that voice, but to see that face, no? With
Yeah.
television, to see that face. But I can see what you're saying in the days of just radio. We grew up with radio in Belize. Basically, that's what we were hearing, and we were imagining seeing those personalities. I remember as a boy, I was like, wow, well, Lindy Rogers looked like softball. You know, you
Yeah.
broadcasting boxing, using terms like, the hurricane, has now turned into a mile wind, talking about hurricane boxer.
Yeah.
And they're even high describing basketball. Here comes Trench, built like a truck, you know.
Yeah.
And these things are grabbing you, and you're listening, you're hearing how these people are using the voice, but the skill in terms of how they use adjectives and how they describe, you're seeing it.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
seeing
And it does,
like a truck. I know that's a serious buff looking guy, right? And Corey
yeah.
Hickman, Bowser being the boxer, he came out flashy, but then after that, he started dying off and turned into a mile win.
It's interesting
Kenny
that you
Rogers,
mentioned it's interesting that you mentioned skill, because it is a skill. Being
yeah.
able to articulate, it's not easy at all. I remember two things, all right, two experiences I want to share with you. The first one is when I was at BCB we used to do traffic report. So we would have a driver, and then different announcers, I was one of them, would go out early in the morning to do traffic reports so that people know which streets are busy, which, diversion they can take, and so forth. And during this activity, what I did a lot, because I realized that I was not articulating as fluently as I should. It was a lot of and in between my speech. And so I started recording myself so that I could listen back and make corrections. So I started writing down, using cue cards and writing down stuff so that I'm better able to speak fluently without a lot of ahs and ums. And that works. So you mentioning about it being a skill, it is a skill because you develop it after time. So when you hear people, like Mose, I admire Mose. Mose is a really good sportscaster as well. You're able to do that because it takes practice, it takes skill. And then broadcasting as well, the news, for example. Not everybody knows how to read the news, that takes skill. And going back to your previous question of how things have changed from back then to now, we couldn't read the news back at Radio Belize without reviewing it first. We had to be there 30 minutes beforehand to ensure that we'll read all the news that are there, unless like there's a breaking news, then that's different. But you have to review your news to ensure that you are able to pronounce those words correctly. If you're not sure of a word, you either look it up for yourself or you ask somebody the right pronunciation and so forth. Nowadays, that doesn't happen. People don't review, and it shows because they make a lot of mistakes. And even the flow, you're taught that you're supposed to be reading the news confidently. People are not reading confidently. It's like you don't know when one story is finished and they go into the other. There's not that lowering of the voice at the end of that particular story, and then you're entering a new story. So it takes skill. It takes a lot of skill.
It is a skill and practice. And
Practice,
talk about,
for sure.
Belize was the University of Broadcasting. I mean, you're not only a broadcasting institution, that was the only thing we had. Well, we
Yeah.
listened to music from BBC, and Belizean musicians talk about the fact that on Radio Belize we heard everything, so we could play everything. And when they say that to the Americans, they are like, "What? You can play everything?" Yeah, and they can play everything. Talking about my friend Michael Hyde, who's a top Grammy Award-winning musician, is that, man, I could play everything. When I came to America, I played everything because I was listening to everything on Radio Belize.
Yeah.
Played it
Yeah.
all,
Yeah.
And so, but it was also an institution where you all were well trained.
Yeah.
Well trained.
Exactly.
Today, we
Exactly.
don't have that in terms of, even when you talk about your teachers' college training, we don't have the kind of training for teachers that you had then, right?
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
teachers'
We had
college.
I
We don't.
remember Lynette Canto and I were at Radio Belize when we went to do a training at UWI Jamaica at Carimac, which is the School of Communication in Jamaica. And that was radio announcing and presentation. So our lecturer, Faye Ellington, I think she's still doing work at Karimak even now. We did a 1-month course on how to, present and articulate, how to do voice pops, getting recordings and interviews and putting them together so it sounds professional and all of that. That doesn't happen anymore. It's far and few. It has to be an individual thing. Interestingly, when I did my master's at Rochester Institute of Technology, one of my proposal under the OA scholarship was to return and introduce some sort of formal training for journalists at the University of Belize. And I sent that proposal to the then Minister of Education, but it didn't come to fruition. I didn't even get a response at the time. That was in 2014. Yeah. So I wanted to start, the proposal was to start at a certificate level program at UB where older journalists like myself can go and teach classes to those who are interested in learning, and then they can move up after enough people have gotten certified and the available funds and lectures are there. Then you can move it up to maybe an associate's and then move up and so forth. But it didn't work out at all. It didn't work out. And I think as media professionals and as any professional at all, it is important to keep updated with the trends and what's happening, because you're gonna be left behind if you don't. You're gonna be doing things that are not relevant anymore in this time and age, and especially depending on who your audiences are, you have to be able to have that knowledge on how you cater to these audiences and be effective as possible, especially considering that the economical aspect of it, where the dollar is not there anymore. You have to start to do more innovative things that will get more people involved and people who want to be part of it, because people are busy, people are on the go, they don't have time for the read and the listen, and you have to do it in creative ways where and I noticed that nowadays they have yes, exactly, short and sweet, being very concise. I did a course in college that basically highlights that instead of say use 2 words to say the same thing, you just turn it into one. Use too much words because people don't have time for to listen to you. So you have to say like one elevator pitch. You only have 30 seconds to get your point across, And
which fits right into new media. Desiree will take a break, and when we come back, we will continue this beautiful conversation. I mean, man, in that so much is coming out in this conversation with Deseree Aruz, Belizean media personality, a communication expert. And I will add that, a communication expert and a media expert. I mean, listen to the kind of people who we got that Belize them, man. And Desiree, I hope that then when I may accept that proposal for you to teach media, because we need that. They are not the journalists, or we don't even call them journalists. Like Samuels, Belize International journalist tells me, I see BILAL, but they're not journalists, they're reporters, and he's Marquette University man, Pulitzer Prize winner, and I had interviewed him. But when we come back, we will continue with Deseree Kane Aruz. Stay with us when we come.
The Diaspora Relations Unit within the Ministry of Tourism, Youth, Sports, and Diaspora Relations serves as the vital link between Belizeans living abroad and the government of Belize. As a unit, we strengthen relationships, encourage engagement, ensure that Belizeans around the world remain connected to their homeland, and make sure that wherever you are, Belize still feels like home. Another major initiative managed by the unit is the Diaspora Returnee Incentive Program, DRIP. This program was established to attract Belizeans in the diaspora who are considering repatriation. Through the program, eligible returnees are entitled to import household and personal effects, tools of trade, and a personal transportation free of import duties and taxes. It's our way of saying, welcome home, and making your transition back to Belize as smooth as possible. Another important aspect of the unit's work is the coordination and distribution of in-kind donations from the Belizean diaspora and friends abroad. As a unit, we organize and host diaspora meetings with large Belizean communities. These in-person gatherings allow for open dialogue, information sharing, and collaboration between the government and its citizens overseas. Through these interactions, Belizeans abroad are informed of national initiatives and can share their perspectives, ideas, and contributions towards national growth. We also attend events held by the diaspora to continue meaningful dialogues, share updates, hear ideas and inquiries, allowing us to keep the Belizean bond strong. Visit our website to access our chat feature. It allows Belizeans abroad to connect with our team directly for any inquiries or support. We encourage all Belizeans living abroad to sign up to our registry. This will help us keep you informed about initiatives, events, and opportunities to engage with your home country. The Diaspora Relations Unit, serving Belizeans, strengthening connections, and building a bridge between the world and home.
I am a true born Belizean. Belize my home, my native land. I want you people to understand. I want you people to understand. I am proud to be a Belizean. Your bande, your bande. Your bande, your bande. I am a true born Belizean. Belize my home, my native land. I want you people to understand. I am proud to be a Belizean. Your bande, your bande. Your bande, your bande. I am a true born Belizean. Belize my home, my native land. I want you people to understand. I am proud to be a Belizean. Your bande, your bande. Your bande, your bande. I am a true born Belizean. Belize my home, my native land.
And greetings, welcome. We are back with this final segment of Navel String Connections, the Belizean show in the Belizean diaspora, coming to you live on XTV, formerly Creme TV, XTV. And you can watch Navel String Connections on the XTV Facebook page. And you can also watch Navel String Connections on the XTV YouTube channels. And if you missed today's show, you could always go back and look at the pre-recorded show that is there for you to watch, and you could always look at it. All those shows of Navel String Connections can be looked at. And our brother Harlan makes sure that as soon as the show begins, he has the Facebook broadcast up and running. And we want to thank our brother for always being here and being the technician for Navel String Connections. We want to say also that Navel String Connection is sponsored by the Ministry of Tourism and Diaspora Relations. Our producers are Noor Mohammed and XTV. And again, we have our special guest in studio, Deseree Aruz, media expert, media personality, broadcast journalist. And he can go on and on. Just find out that you're a serious singer, you know. You are Frisco never used to like sing for that show.
I don't remember. Maybe I'll leave it, but I'm going to tell you fair that me and Mr. Tony, right?
Yes.
Tony does though. Actually, he does have this particular time slot right here on Thursday. for Belize musicians past and present.
There you
Yeah.
go.
But
Welcome,
anyway,
man.
me and Mr. Tony, me do a collaboration some years back when I was at Creme. We sing a song together, one kind of soca-ish song. I have to